Hey, Tao Pingaline's Math and History, and we're going to be taking a look at math in the periodic table of elements. So recently a science teacher asked me if I could make this video because there is going to be some math that's going to take place in the periodic table of elements, and it's also going to be used in what we're going to be learning. What we're going to be using math for and what we're going to be learning about is counting atoms in a formula. So we're going to use math to understand how to count atoms in a formula. But before we do the math part, there are some short explainings for what an atom is and what a molecule is. Then we'll be able to understand what the formula is. So what an atom is an atom is a unit or a tiny particle of a chemical element. So pretty much, you can imagine an atom being very, very, very small. But when we said that it's going to be a tiny particle of a chemical element, pretty much everywhere you see is actually made of atoms. Like, this wall is made of atoms. This floor is made of atoms. This remote, actually this marble as well. So atoms are actually building blocks of objects of the world. But they're very, very tiny. So there are going to be a lot of atoms in this marble. There's a lot of them to make a very big object. The other definition that we're going to be reviewing is called a molecule. A molecule is a group of atoms connected together to make a chemical reaction. Here's an example of a chemical reaction, and here's an example of a molecule. A molecule has multiple atoms connected together. So we have H2O as the formula. The H represents hydrogen in the periodic table, and that 2 represents that there are 2 hydrogen atoms in this formula. And that O is going to represent oxygen, which is this bigger marble. So a molecule is going to be, these marbles are going to be connected to each other. So a molecule is a group of atoms together. Here's an example.
Perhaps I misjudged the scale on that one. Oh! That does it! Listen up, Safe. I will spill your contents even if I have to tear you apart. Yeah. Bit by bit. Yeah. Molecule by molecule. Atom by atom. Uh-oh. Certainly the safe couldn't survive nuclear detonation. Come to Papa!
So what Plankton was trying to do was steal the secret formula, and that was inside a safe. So the safe is made of molecules. Then the molecule has a bunch of atoms grouped together. So he tried to tear them apart. And you can actually tear atoms apart from a molecule, but the danger is that it'll explode. And to safely do that, you'll need a special machine that scientists use to make the atoms break apart from each other. So here comes the math part of an element on the periodic table. So a chemical reaction must have at least 2 or more elements that you can combine together. So many scientists like to use these kind of formulas so they understand what they're working with. We can understand that hydrogen has 2 atoms and oxygen has 1 atom. So we get H2O if we combine them together. Here's another example that we can try. Nitrogen and oxygen are bonded together, also known as mixed with each other. So we want to know how many atoms of each there are. We understand that oxygen is going to have 2 atoms. But what is nitrogen? Well, if you just see nitrogen as nothing, scientists would want to understand that, and we would understand that's going to be 1. There could be a 1 right behind the nitrogen, but if there's nothing written, it's understood that that element has 1 atom. What these numbers are right here, that number 2 and that number 1, they're actually called subscripts, and they tell you how many atoms are in that element. Like, there are 2 oxygen atoms in oxygen. So oxygen has 2 atoms. That's what that number 2 tells you, because scientists do not want to go O plus O plus O. Because imagine having that 2 change into a 16. Sometimes elements will actually have atoms that are higher than 10 by number count. So you do not want to write O plus O plus O plus O plus O plus O. So that subscript is actually going to help you save time while solving these problems. When there's a formula, it's telling you that both elements are going to combine with each other in order to make a molecule. So the formula is telling you what you're working with and how many atoms there are. This is going to be another example of elements with a formula, but this time the formula is going to be super long, unless we do a step that helps us simplify the formula. We're going to be learning about that step in another video of counting atoms, so it's going to be in a part 2. Thank you for watching Taoping Airlines Math Industry. Like and subscribe. Please move on to part 2 of this video sequence to learn more about math in the periodic table of elements.